Parents' Rights in Education was conceived in 2009 and became a tax-deductible nonprofit in 2011. In May of 2019, PRE held its first soapbox event, America's Cultural Crisis. Should we stay or should we go? Author of Get Out Now was the keynote speaker. Mary Hassan's speech is featured on the PRE website. We decided to have another soapbox, May 2nd of the following year, 2020, featuring Walt Heyer, author of Trans Life Survivors. 7 weeks beforehand, Oregon Governor Kate Brown declared a state of emergency to control the spread of the China virus. During the following year, in response to repeated emergency shutdown restrictions, PRE rescheduled the event 4 times and changed the event venue 3. It was renamed the Northwest Safe Schools Summit, and more speakers were invited to present. The result was a day-long dive into the complex issues plaguing K-12 public schools. Because of the unrest and militant violent protests in Portland, Oregon, it was decided to move the location from the Portland airport to a venue in the suburbs. The venue owner was adamant PRE not advertise the exact location until 24 hours in advance, so as to avoid possible negative attention caused by detractors and protesters. We are thrilled to share these videos from the first Northwest Safe Schools Summit in the hopes you will be enlightened and empowered to take action. Please watch them in order, as there is a natural progression you won't want to miss. In April of 1983, Walt had gender reassignment surgery. At first he was giddy for the fresh start, but hormones and sex-change genital surgery couldn't solve the underlying issues driving his gender dysphoria. He detransitioned more than 25 years ago and learned the truth. Hormones and surgery may alter appearances, but nothing changes the immutable fact of your sex. Over 20 years ago, Walt met and married a wonderful woman who didn't care about the changes to his body. Now, they help others whose lives were derailed by sex change. Walt Heyer is known internationally. He travels worldwide, sharing his life experience. No one can dispute his testimony. Welcome, Walt Heyer.
All right. Well, I'm Walt Heyer, and I'm coming to you today as someone with quite a bit of experience in this arena that they identify as transgender. My little journey started in 1944 at the age of 4. And quick calculations will tell you that I'm 80 years old, and I've been working through these issues now for over 75 years. The one thing that I have learned from my time over the last 75 years is that in the beginning, there was one man and one woman. And today, in 2021, there's still one man and one woman. To this date, no one has ever transitioned a male into a female or a female into a male. And I can tell you that when I started at the age of 4 in Los Angeles, California, cross-dressing with my grandmother's assistants, it all seemed very benign. It seemed like it was fun. It almost seemed like a game. Grandma thought, I looked really cute. She was a seamstress and made me a purple chiffon evening dress, full-length dress, very well made. And she just thought I looked so cute in that dress. What we need to understand is when you put a boy in a dress, a 4-year-old boy in a dress, you are causing child abuse. And child abuse, by that what I mean is it's psychological and emotional, and sometimes it ends up being sexual child abuse. Nothing good comes from telling a boy he can be a girl. I can tell you, I wouldn't be sitting here 75, 76 years later talking about something that happened to me that was so painful and disrupted my life so much that I'm still discussing it with you today. It needs to stop. And until we understand that no one actually changes or transitions, the words that they've picked for transitioning and transgender, words that are to try to convince you that something actually happens. The only thing that happens is you put a boy in a dress. You got a boy, a biological boy wearing a dress. That does not make a woman. In fact, to say that it's a woman is an insult to all women, and the harm that's done, that was done to me when I was 4 years old, continued. And as a result of that single purple dress in my early life, which became a secret, and every time Grandma was babysitting me for 2.5 years, that she kept that information from my mom and dad because that was our little game, our little secret. I took that purple dress home when I was about 6 years old and put it in the bottom dresser drawer because I had become so accustomed to those affirmations that I was starting to think that I should have been a girl, that I was born wrong. And keep in mind, in 1944, they had no words to describe what was happening to me. They didn't have words like transition, transgender, dysphoria. I was just a boy who was being abused by his grandmother because she was putting me in a purple dress that she had made for me and telling me how cute I was and affirming me as though it was appropriate, as though there was no harm being done. But then the harm came. When my parents found the dress and confronted me with it, and I said that Grandma made the dress, and every time you took me over there and she was babysitting me, we would dress up. And my dad exploded. My mom was horrified because it was her mother. And from that point on, I was never allowed to go to Grandma's house without both my mom and dad with me. The purple dress disappeared from my bottom drawer. But what didn't disappear was the psychological and emotional damage that was done by my grandmother. That did not go away with throwing the dress away. That was already done. The imprint on a 4-year-old's mind about his right identity had been distorted, had been abused, had been confused. And I was left to deal with that as a 6-year-old. My dad didn't know what to do. I mean, he was shocked, absolutely shocked that his mother-in-law would put his boy in a dress and tell him how cute he looked. Or even, for that matter, make a dress. And he became so confused himself that he decided what was appropriate was that he would start using heavy discipline on me as a way, sort of like a blacksmith would do when he sticks steel in a hot stove to heat it up, and he would start shaping it, molding it. My dad started trying to shape me and mold me with discipline, with a hardwood floor plank across my bare butt. At first, I screamed my head off because it hurt so much. So I would just take the pain from the floor plank and not cry. And he did stop. So confused by the fact that it was no longer being effective. But his adopted brother, Uncle Fred, heard about me and the purple dress and Grandma and all that by the time I was 7 or 8 years old. He decided that I was fair game to be sexually molested. And so that's what he did. And so if we just stop and pause for a second, the purple dress caused me to have psychological and emotional trouble. about who I was. That's child abuse. The hardwood floor plank across my bare butt was child abuse, and that was the result of the purple dress as well. Now, I'm being sexually abused by my uncle. Why? Because of a purple dress. So when you think that it's okay to put a boy in a dress, think again. Because he may be sitting, talking on a video when he's 75 or 80 years old, saying how he was abused, how it destroyed his life, how it destroyed his income, how it destroyed his family. Some things never get repaired as a result of early childhood abuse. Yeah, you learn to work through them, you learn to deal with it, but the losses sometimes are horrific. Do not think for one moment that putting a boy in a dress is a good idea. Do not think for a moment that it's benign and that nothing is being done that will harm him. That you'd be wrong. And in many cases, you'd be dead wrong. Because 19% of the people who end up identifying as transgender will end their life via suicide, according to Swedish studies. That's not speculation. I attempted suicide because I was at the end of my rope as well. As I said, I didn't have any way to deal with this at 9 or 10 or 11. It wasn't until the early 1950s that there was a headline about somebody named Christine Jorgensen that made headlines about a soldier becoming, a male soldier becoming a female. And they used the word transgender, transsexual. Who was Christine Jorgensen? How did Christine Jorgensen end up splashed across headlines in the U.S.? Christine Jorgensen was an alcoholic, a chain smoker, an abusive, by all accounts, individual to the people around him, not psychologically stable, but still made headlines. The individual, Christine Jorgensen, needed some good psychotherapy, didn't need hormones, didn't need body parts cut off. And yet that's what they did. So what we're battling today, and what we're really talking about today, is a group of people in our country who, if they can't kill a child in the womb via Planned Parenthood or some other way, if they can't kill them in the womb, Planned Parenthood is going to change their gender after they're born. That's what's going on. They can't kill them in the womb, they'll change their gender when they come out. That's insane, ladies and gentlemen. Totally insane. It's insane because it's categorically impossible, biologically, scientifically, or medically, to change a boy into a girl. I'm not going to lie about it today. No one transitions. The fact of the matter is, there are actually no transgenders, because that suggests that the surgery and hormones were successful, but it's not. There's still men in dresses. I lived 8 years as a female. I know to what I'm talking about. I struggled through my teens in high school with this purple dress in my head. I ran track. I was on the football team. Sure, I was only a 135-pound little guy. But I was battling what had happened to me when I was 4 years old, and when I was 6 years old, and when I was 9 years old. Still struggling because of a purple dress, a single purple dress. Let that sink in. Don't do it to kids. Don't abuse children by telling them they can change gender. Because you're wrong. is child abuse. It's horrific. And they're not going to get over it anytime soon. I ended up going through high school. The time I got out of school, I started studying at a college in Pasadena, and I eventually became a draftsman for an aerospace company. And I worked up through the ranks, going to school more and more, until I became an associate design engineer on the Apollo space missions, working in the area of cryogenics. I also got married, had 2 children, but struggled every single day with that purple dress that my grandma put me in when I was 4 years old. Everything on the outside of me looked quite good. Driving new cars, I had a nice house, I was making good money, I had my own parking place, but I was hurting because of what happened. I started drinking to try to cope with what had happened to me as a young boy. Who do you go to? Who do you talk to? How do you deal with these issues of being physically, sexually, and emotionally abused by 3 adults who were in your life? I drank more. I still remained quite successful. I left the aerospace industry and went to work for American Honda Motor Company, where I ended up being the national port operations manager, and I had a great job. But by this time, alcohol was starting to take a toll on me. I've been married now for many years. So what did I do? I wanted to try to resolve the issues just like everybody does. I wanted to try to figure out what had happened that had caused me to still struggle. When I married with 2 children and had a successful job, I thought all these things would make it go away, that I would be fine. So I went to one of those gender specialists. You all know who they are. They're the ones who know more than anybody. These are the woke, brilliant people. I happened to go to a guy named Paul Walker. He had a PhD after his name, and he was actually the original chairperson who drafted the WPATH standards of care that are used today. They were drafted in San Diego, California, with him as the chairperson and other doctors who performed the surgery, including Dr. Laub and some others. During that time, he drafted the standards of care in 1979. I did not know that in 1979. I learned that in 1981 when I showed up knocking on his door because he had a PhD after his name, and he was touting himself as being an expert in diagnosing and evaluating people who are good candidates for reassignment surgery because he had drafted the WPATH standards of care. He must be brilliant, recognized around the world as brilliant. And he told me that I had gender dysphoria. He said that term was going to be used soon because gender identity disorder was just not fitting real well. People were too upset with using something that had the word disorder in it. That was too harmful. We didn't want to use the truth, disorder. So let's just make it sound a little better and we'll just call it dysphoria. What is dysphoria? It's a feeling. It's not even a diagnosis. Dysphoria is just the opposite of euphoria. That's all it is. And yet, we've come to a place today where you diagnose somebody like Dr. Walker did with me, and automatically you think, oh, that's a diagnosis. You got to do something, and you got to treat that dysphoria. It's only a feeling, but you need to treat feelings because, gosh, even if they change, which, by the way, they will, they don't last. Feelings always change. I used to like Fords, but I don't. I used to think they were the best. You see, this idea that a feeling isn't going to change, and then we need to start cutting off body parts, breasts for girls, genitals for boys, stuffing hormones in them because they're never going to change, is insane. And anybody who supports it needs to re-examine their thinking. Because you're going to see somebody sitting doing a video when they're 80 years old saying you never should have done it. You never should have done it. But I didn't have Walt Heyer telling me in those days, didn't have the history, didn't have the knowledge. I believed what this guy said. He had a PhD after his name, must be brilliant. He wrote the standards of care. He must know what he's doing. So I followed that regimen that he said, you need hormones, you need them for 2 years, and then you'll be approved for surgery most likely if you follow all the steps. I did. I was approved first. He said start on hormones in 1981. I had the surgery in 1983. Right after, or just before I had the surgery, I was divorced after 17 years. My kids, I abandoned them. My gender was more important than caring for my children. Absolutely the most selfish, foolish, ridiculous thing I've ever done. And that's why I have a website that says sexchangeregret.com, not for my own regret, but for the regret of what I did to the people around me, especially my first wife and children. So in 1983, I underwent the knife. Dr. Biber, when I went to his office, he had already performed 3,000 of these, quote, sex change surgeries, which, by the way, a little secret, doesn't change your sex. Rearranges your genitalia, but it doesn't change you. It can't. It's cosmetic. It's a lie. But yet he filled out an affidavit saying that he changed me from a male to a female. I lived as Laura Jensen, female, working for the federal government at FDIC in San Francisco. I worked for the Postal Service. I had all the trappings of what you look at and say, well, that was success. But after about 7.5, nearly 8 years, I started going to UC Santa Cruz and studying psychology. Because I wanted to be a PhD like Dr. Walker and sit and talk to people and help them evaluate whether they should go through the surgery or not. I started reading the books and found out that everybody who goes through this procedure, this was, like I say, in the 80s, people were suffering from things like body dysmorphia, dissociative disorders, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, many other disorders that are never, ever considered prior to giving somebody hormone therapy or providing surgical procedures for them. This was my wake-up call, studying psychology. I didn't get the wake-up call from the guy with a PhD at his office. He wasn't smart enough because he was an advocate, because everything to him was gender dysphoria. You could have taken a rock and put it in front of him, and that rock would have gender dysphoria, because that's all they see. That's all Planned Parenthood can see. That's all the left can see. Everybody's looked at as though you're wrong. You need to change. There's something wrong with you. And we can fix you because we're the left. They're harming people. They're the ones causing the suicides. Because they're not addressing the underlying comorbidities, the real issues that had caused me to have my confusion about who I was. Sexual abuse. Hello. Sexual abuse is a crime, in case nobody's aware of that. I told Dr. Walker about being sexually abused. Didn't matter to him. That's gender dysphoria. I told him about being physically abused. That doesn't matter. That's gender dysphoria. I told him about wearing the dress that grandma made me. Well, that's gender dysphoria. The fact of the matter is, skip the dysphoria. Get real. It's all abuse. Abuse. Replace dysphoria with abusing children. Then you're going to have something. I lived those 8 years, and after I came out of my studies at UC Santa Cruz, realized that I had been duped and tricked and lied to. Nobody actually changed. I decided to go back to Dr. Viber and Dr. Walker in 1990 and ask them to reverse that affidavit that said they'd changed me from male to female. I want it reversed back from female to male. But what I want them to do was present to the court in San Mateo, California, that they actually had effectively changed me to a female. I want them to provide documentation to the court in San Mateo, California, that surgery and hormones can actually change a man into a woman. The court document is on file in San Mateo as of today. They had to admit they cannot change a man into a woman. They can't do it medically. They can't do it hormonally. The closest surgery and hormones can come to affecting a, quote, transition or sex change is the one word that should stick in your mind. Neuter. That's it. Neuter. No change, except you are now neutered. We did that to my dog when I was a young boy. We had him neutered. That's what they did to me. That's what they do to everybody who goes through these surgeries. Men don't become women. That's a lie. I am not going to sit here and say that these individuals that we see on television and other places that are being elevated to high places in our society have changed into women. I would prefer to see people who've gone through and come out the other side and been able to deal with their gender confusion and admitted that they made a mistake, rather than support people who are stuck in the middle of the confusion. And my heart goes out to them. But I'm not going to call them women, because they're not. That's an insult to biological women to say that a man with altered genitalia and some hormones stuck in him is all of a sudden, voila, a woman. That is insane. And yet, that's what we're supporting in schools. That's what teachers are doing to kids. And it shouldn't happen, because it's child abuse. And because they will regret it. Recently, I had a foster mother contact me about her 13-year-old daughter, who had been identifying as a boy since the age of 10. And through several emails back and forth, I said, ask her why she wants to destroy who she is. As I explained to the mother, it's really not. Transgenderism is a word that describes somebody trying to destroy who they are, because they're not trying to become someone else, because that can't happen. They can only destroy who they really are. They can only destroy who they really are with hormones and surgery and a name change. So Mom sat down with this young girl, who's 13, who'd been identifying as a boy since 10, and asked the 13-year-old, you're a beautiful girl. I remember what a beautiful girl you were. Why do you want to destroy that beautiful girl that you really are? What happened? What caused this? Remember, the girl's in foster care. The girl told Mom, with tears running down her cheeks, my dad was a bad dad. He hurt me. She didn't want to be who she was because she'd been sexually abused, ladies and gentlemen. Identifying as a transgender for her was a defense mechanism against being sexually abused again. Not because she needed hormones or needed to, quote, transition or to identify as a man. No, she needed to be protected from a man who had abused her. Likewise, I had a 15-year-old and had been exchanging emails with Mom for quite a while about the girl wanting boys' underwear, cut her hair short. Mom had been divorced from her husband for some 7 or 8 years. I had the same kind of conversation with her. Sit her down on the couch quietly. Where'd you get this idea? Did you learn from school? Did you learn from the internet? Where did this come from? Why do you want to destroy who you are? She asked. The 15-year-old girl says, you didn't know. Dad had been sexually molesting me for years. Another bad dad. You see, in 100% of the cases of the people that I've worked with, and I'm here to tell you, I've got 18,000 emails in my Sex Change Regret and Walt's book email account from people going back and forth about having regret, having questions, family members, doctors, psychologists, and others, because people are being harmed by these procedures. 18,000, not 5, not 10, not 1 or 2, 18,000. I work to answer these emails 7 days a week, 365 days a year, starting typically at 4:30 in the morning and stopping around 8:30 or 9 at night. I got one from Sweden today from a Muslim. You see, they come from all over the world. People don't understand how much harm is being done by this insane ideology. I know because I've been there. I know because I've sat across the table from these people that are hurting deeply because something happened to them. Every last person that I have engaged with on some level, whether it's through email, on the phone, or sitting personally with, has been able to tell me what happened to them that caused them to not like who they are, that caused them to try to identify as a transgender because it was more comfortable and admitting that dad had sexually abused him or that something else had happened. And some of the stories are horrible, gut-wrenching. They need help. They need our love and support. They don't need hormones. They don't need hormone blockers. And they don't need surgery. Unless you want to ruin their life. Then, by all means, give them hormone blockers, cut off girls' breasts, and ruin their life. You can ruin an entire generation, and they're about to do so because no one's stopping them. No one seems to really care, or the ones that care don't seem to have the power or the grit to stop them. It's sad. We're tossing our kids away like little lab rats to the LGBTQ community saying, well, yeah, we can do anything we want with them because Biden says so. We can appoint people to Health and Human Services that can make it all legal and well and good to harm kids. Still harmful, still destructive. I want it to stop. I want my inbox to not have any more emails with people asking for help because they were destroyed by this ideology. Please protect our kids. Stop the insanity. Get on the school boards. Stop the teachers. I would not, if it were me, that's just me personally, put my kid in an environment in a school where they're teaching them how to become someone they can never be because Planned Parenthood profits from it, or because the Democrats get more votes because it seems like they're the more compassionate. More compassionate because they're ruining their lives? More compassionate because 19% of them, 19 times more likely to commit suicide? That's compassion? Really? I'm kind of confused about what compassion is. I think compassion is preventing children from being emotionally and psychologically abused by telling them they can select a gender. Being abused with hormone blockers, which were never intended for them to be used in the manner they're using them. It's up to you. I've done documentary films in many, many countries around the world. I've reached over 300 million people in just 1 year talking about the subject. To tell you the truth, I don't feel like I've been very effective in changing the trajectory because they're still doing it. But I'm still speaking. And I will until I take my last breath. Which, as my pastor said, Walt, you're 80. You got 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the dock. And the boat's about to leave the dock, so if you got some work to do, you better get it done. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's save our children. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Northwest Safe Schools Summit. As you can see, attendees were informed, inspired, and motivated to take action. We partnered with several groups, including Quella Winery, Oregonians for Fair Elections, Western Liberty Network, Pacific Justice Institute, Building Education for Students Together, and KSLM Radio. We are happy you decided to learn more about the issues in K-12 public schools today. It just makes sense. Activism can be enjoyable when you are surrounded with like-minded people. And together, we win. We invite you to visit our website, parentsrightsined.org. Take a look around. There are issues pages just for our state chapters because state laws are different. Join us. Make your voice heard is always best when you are with others. Submit the online chapter form. You will also be added to our email list. We help with training, information, branding, and contacts. Like us on Facebook. For the most current news, follow us, comment, and of course, share. Join a pre-Facebook group in your state or local school district. Subscribe to the podcasts. Parents' Rights Now. These are not meant to be entertaining, but provide valuable information, catching you up on the issues quickly. Would you like to help us? Our mission is possible. We've created a great program equipping parents and citizens with the tools they need to be effective in their local school districts. Join the 12 by 12 Club, our small monthly giving program. All donations are important and appreciated, but we know that you have expenses and family obligations, especially if you're a parent. You can do the most by giving a small amount every month. Just $12 a month will go towards our operational expenses and allow PRE to host another summit. Parents' Rights in Education is a tax-deductible 501c3 organization. Donate online or send a check to the address shown here. We are engaged in a war for the hearts and minds of our children. The left has taken control of the K-12 government school bureaucracy, using local public schools for distribution centers to change the culture. Their ultimate goal is to annihilate the constitutional republic of the United States by dismantling the nuclear family and destroying the Christian church. Your contributions are more necessary now than they have ever been.